Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. My name is Mike Dokter. I am the coach of the House High School girls basketball team playing under the Michigan Basketball Academy umbrella. And we are reading through Pound the Stone by Joshua Medcalf. This is the sequel to the book Chop Wood, Carry Water, which is also recorded on here. So if you like what we're reading here, definitely go back and watch the other videos. The entire book is on here. But start with Chop Wood, Carry Water. Great books, first part of the book. If you're just listening for the first time or watching for the first time, thank you for watching. Please leave a comment. Love to get in contact with you. So, Pound the Stone by Joshua Medcalf, chapter 36 and 37. Chapter 36 is Blame versus Responsibility. Blame versus Responsibility. Jason was encouraged by TD's wisdom. He did his best to remind himself of David spending those early years being extraordinarily faithful to very ordinary things. He reminded himself that greatness takes time and that the price of admission to greatness is dirty, hard work. But that wore off as the first weeks of summer passed. Some days it felt like he had never sold a book before, and the in-the-zone feeling from last summer seemed like some distant memory. Jason started to question choosing to spend his summer selling books again in the first place. One night, as he was helping Jan clean the dishes, she asked him what was happening. He couldn't hold back the frustration. Nothing is working. I'm doing everything I can. I followed all of Russ's secrets to success, and every morning I remember what TD told me about being extraordinarily faithful to the ordinary things. But what good is it if I do all that stuff and people still won't listen to me or buy from me or take me seriously? Despite his anger, Jan stayed calm. Tell me, Jason, where's this coming from? I don't know. It's fine. I'll get over it. Life just isn't fair, that's all. Oh, life isn't fair? Or excuse me, how is life not fair? Jason looked at her like she had grew another head. It just isn't. Not for guys like me. I didn't have a dad growing up. I didn't have money. I had zero advantages. Some people get handed everything and other people don't. I don't have parents who buy me the best gear or pay for me to play in summer league or pay for one-on-one coaching. I know that the deck is stacked against me. I know it won't be as easy for me as it is for everyone else. You do? Really? There was a little twinkle in Jan's eye. Obviously, she was holding something back. What, you think I don't? Jason, it's true that we all start from different places in life. But if someone is truly great, there's a reason things seem easy for them. The easier they make it look, the more work they put in the dark. Do you know who else had no father and no money growing up? Steve Jobs. He was an illegitimate child of immigrants. He was adopted. He grew up in a house that's smaller than this one in a neighborhood much poorer than most. He was forced to change schools at age 11 because of how relentlessly he was bullied in school. After dropping out of college, he had to recycle bottles in order to have enough money to eat. Now, how easy do you think he had it from the man to be the man he became? Probably not very easy, Jason was stunned. He had never heard that before. When you pull back the layers on people who seem to have lived extraordinary lives, you rarely find a silver spoon or childhood prodigy. Occasionally you do, but more than not, you find people who decided to do the very best that they could with what they had right where they were at. Life is 10% about what you have when you begin, things like natural talent and opportunity, and 90% of what you do with it. Maybe this is why more often than not, those who start with less accomplish so much more. I know Russ and I wouldn't be anywhere near where we were if we could have gotten a comfortable job out of college. We wouldn't have ever truly learned how to hustle for real had we not been turned down for entry-level jobs everywhere we looked. We were forced to cut our teeth on the street, and that experience paid off exponentially over time. Our culture is obsessed with eliminating struggle. There are parents whose goal is their kids to want for nothing. But what if they're handicapping them instead? Our fear of failure for the next generation is creating people primed for mediocrity at best and crippled at worst in comparison to their potential. Experiencing repeated failure and lack of resources forces you to develop levels of grit, intellectual creativity, and resourcefulness others have never tapped into. But reaching your greatest potential depends on whether you lean into that process or run from it. Most people choose to run. They would rather fixate on the 10% of their lives they can't control, and so they complain and blame everyone and everything. But the funny thing about blame is that while it might temporarily make us feel better, it does absolutely nothing to create a better tomorrow. Anyone can blame, but very few have the courage to take responsibility. Are there systematic issues in this country? Absolutely. Is life much more challenging for different groups of people? Absolutely. Do some people have it harder than others? Absolutely. But blame is about the past. Responsibility is about making the most of the present to create a better future. Everyone wants things to change, but nobody wants to change. Everybody wants things to get better, but very few people are willing to become the change they need to see happen in their world. It's easy to blame. It's hard to take responsibility. It's so easy to look at someone else and say, oh, if I had their athleticism, I would be a millionaire. If I had their voice, I would have a record deal. If I came from that family, I'd be killing it in business. If I had their budget, talent, good looks, height, then everything would be different. But it's a lie. The hard truth is that every person has 2 or 3 ideas or natural abilities that would make them a millionaire if they would just work hard enough to see them all the way through. But the reality is most people quit when things get uncomfortable. Forget the fact that you must persevere through hard, painful, exhausted. Forget the fact that you must persevere through hard, painful, exhausted, and on the cusp of total disaster to make it to that level. Everyone has the potential, but few will develop the grit. The most valuable things in life you can't be given, and they can't be bought. No amount of money, family status, or talent can buy character and grit. That can only be earned. And Jason, I know that's what you're doing. You're earning them right now. So stay patient and consistent. It will all come together in time. Jason felt like he'd just taken a big drink from a fire hose of wisdom. He thought about it that night as he hit the court for practice, hoping that Jan was right. All right. So, a little bit longer chapter. Blame versus responsibility. Look, at the end of the day, friends, everybody has ultimately similar opportunities, right? You're given different starting points at times, but I know people, myself included, who have wasted opportunities that they were given, wasted talent because they had a bad attitude, wasted really, really amazing potential because they just were lazy. That was me too for a while. And there are other people who just put their heads down and decide to develop that grit and perseverance that they need to be able to push through. And everybody watching this video is watching this video for a reason. And I think a lot of times you're trying to find something, or you're trying to find that key. You're trying to find that really special thing that can maybe get you to that next level. And the reality is that thing doesn't exist. The thing is very simple. It's perseverance and grit and hard work and surrounding yourself with the right people. Your work ethic and the people you surround yourself with are really the differentiating factors of where you're going to be 5 years from now compared to now. So, great chapter. Moving on, chapter 37. Sleep through the storms. The rust slowly came off and Jason fell into a rhythm. Sales came easier. And while it wasn't the crazy numbers that happened at the end of last summer, he was making good progress. The heat and long hours were made easier by the fact that he also really looked forward to his training each night. He felt like he was finally starting to get everything that TD had been teaching him. But that wasn't the only thing he was excited about. He knew that he and Kaya were just friends, but it felt like their connection was growing stronger even with the distance between them. They didn't talk every day, but when they did, it was always a bright spot of Jason's day, which is why what happened next totally blindsided him. He was taking his lunch break in the park one day, eating the sandwich that Jan had packed for him. He was flipping through his Instagram feed when he saw it. A picture of Kaya smiling with her arm around another guy. But it wasn't just any guy. It was Trey, the guard who had played for Hudson. The same guy Jason had punched in the face. His nemesis. Pain hit Jason in the stomach and he felt the blast of angry blood rushing through his head. He couldn't believe it. This felt like nothing he had ever felt before. Betrayal, but more personal somehow. Didn't Kaya know how much he hated this guy? Was she doing this on purpose to somehow mess with him? It felt like a sick joke that he couldn't figure out the punchline to. He walked around in a daze the rest of the day. When he got home, he went straight to his room after dinner and locked the door. He didn't want to talk to or see anyone. He really tried to shake it off the next day and just get back to work, but it didn't work. He went back to Russ and Jan's changed. And hit the basketball court. Maybe a workout would help him get out of it, but that just made it worse. With every shot and every drill, he thought about Trey. And thinking about a guy like that getting the chance to be with a girl as great as Kaya spun Jason's head in circles. It made him a weird combination of angry and sad. He went home even more depressed than before, a haze hanging over him. At home, Russ was out on the porch as usual reading a book. He looked like a guy who's ready to punch a hole in the wall again. Jason just nodded and sat in one of the porch chairs. "What's going on, son?" As Jason told him, he didn't expect Russ to get it, but instead Russ nodded and got silent. "I'm sorry you're going through that. That's one of the most frustrating things I can imagine for a guy your age. I know this because it happened to me." "Really?" "Sure did. I met Jan in college, but she wouldn't give me the time of day. I had to wait just like you, so we became friends. But then she started dating this no-good punk kid named Corey who I hated. But I had to watch the girl that I was in love with go for him instead of me. It was brutal." "What happened?" A big smile broke over Russ's face. "Well, obviously I got the girl. That's a story for another time, though. Tonight, I want to tell you a different story. It's all about a ship." "A ship?" "Yes, a group of young men were putting together a sailing crew for a dangerous, epic journey, and they wanted the best sailors in the world. One man stood out from the rest. He told them that he had plenty of experience to qualify for the job, but the only thing they needed to know is that I sleep through the storms. They were confused, but he just repeated that. He had always done his job so well that he could sleep through any storm. They hired him on the spot. Russ smiled, getting into the story. During the first week of the trip, they encountered a ferocious storm on the Pacific Ocean, one of the worst hurricanes of all times. Waves as high as mountain ranges. Sure enough, the sailor was sleeping. They tried to wake him up, but he told them to leave them alone. He sleeps through the storms. The next morning, when things had settled down, they realized that every single tiny thing that this man was responsible for on the boat was still secured. Every single knot was still tied tight. Everyone was in awe. "Yeah, I would be too. Guy was doing his job." Russ nodded. "Jason, the storms in life are inevitable. It doesn't matter if you're a good person or a bad person. The storms will come. My hope is that you will start doing all the things necessary to prepare for when the next storm comes. Because they always come, just like the seasons. When it comes to relationships, love is an action, not a feeling. Kaya's choice is somewhat irrelevant if you love her. If you really love someone, then their behavior is somewhat irrelevant. It shouldn't determine your behavior. Or that is just manipulation on your part, not love. A very wise man once said, love is patient, love is kind, love bears all things, endures all things, love never ends. Feelings come and go, but love is endless, forever. Jason nodded, encouraged by the strange story of a sailor who slept through the storms. One other thing, Jason, while we're talking about storms, Russ continued. They can often come when you least expect them. For me, it was in my mid-30s after a massive success in my career. On the outside, it looked like everything was going well. It looked like I was living my dreams, but on the inside, I was lost in a hurricane of darkness. I spent every moment of that time deathly afraid of failure. Eventually, I found myself literally standing on the edge of a bridge one night, wondering if maybe the world might be better off without me. Really? You? Jason couldn't believe it. Russ was probably the strongest person he had ever met. But the older man nodded, tears in his eyes, shaken by the memory. I was so afraid of appearing weak by reaching out and just talking to someone about my fear that I almost ended my life. Russ breathed deep. Jason, this is why chasing outcomes is so dangerous. It can literally cost you your life. Michael Phelps went through something similar, even after he had already won 18 gold medals. When the storms came, what matters is who you've become in the process of your life. Because if you've been faithful in the little things in every area of your life, and you put your trust in the right place, then when the storms come, you'll be able to sleep through them. Okay, that's a heavy chapter. And we're right at about our time, so I'm not going to say much of it. But the important thing in that chapter is knowing where you're anchored and knowing what your anchor is and understanding what your anchor is. And the storms will come. If you put all of your value and all of your hope in something that can be taken away from you, if it's a skill, if it's a sport, if it's anything on this earth, that thing can be taken away from you. And the reality is the storms will come. I promise you that. And they will come when you least expect them. And the most important thing is to understand and hear deep down in your soul who you really are and whose you really are. That is what's most important in every area of your life. All the other stuff doesn't really matter, because there is an eternal God out there who loves you, and that love never ends. And if you can understand that and you can buy into that, there is the opportunity to be able to sleep through the storms. So we'll keep going in the rest of the chapters, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye now.